A little over 10 years ago, I was consecrated as Bishop Coadjutor of this diocese, with the responsibility to continue learning and growing in preparation for fulfilling the office of Bishop Diocesan on January 1st, 2007. Immediately following the consecration, I began a promised listening tour. A listening tour of the diocese with weekday and weekend stops at 54 congregations, 4 convocation councils, and 4 clericus gatherings, all in about 120 days. The purpose, as I had promised, was deep and holy listening. An opportunity to hear your hopes and dreams, your deepest longings, your hurts, your frustrations, and your desires. Desires to live more fully into the promises of our baptismal covenant. That process took more than the anticipated 100 days, stretching to 120. But I came away with a more profound understanding of who is the Diocese of Eastern Michigan and what you stand for. I saw a people committed to your faith with amazing resilience in very tough places to be church. Surviving, if not flourishing, in the midst of economic scarcity and demographic decline. Committed to local, grassroots self-determination and suspicious of centralized authority. Trapped in the perspectives of scarcity rather than abundance. Seeking leadership that can point us all in a new direction and toward renewed hope. 10 years ago, George W. Bush was in the White House. Hillary Rodham Clinton was in the Senate. Bernie Sanders was a little-known senator from Vermont. And Donald J. Trump was a self-proclaimed billionaire real estate mogul hosting a reality TV show. Few, if any of us, had heard of Senator Barack Obama. And the Tea Party was something that happened in Boston a long time ago. The Great Recession was an unanticipated economic collapse 2 years in our future. The near death of the U.S. automotive industry was unimaginable. Within the Episcopal Church, we had just witnessed the installation of the first woman as presiding bishop and primate. Persons of the same gender were not allowed to marry. The Chicago Cubs hadn't won a World Series in 98 years. What a difference 10 years makes. Over the past 10 years, this nation elected Barack Obama as the first black president. We've survived the Great Recession, if not completely recovered. We've elected the first presiding bishop who is African American. And marriage is now legal in all 50 states for 2 persons regardless of gender. And all marriages may be blessed in the Episcopal Church. The Chicago Cubs haven't won a World Series in 9 days. And Donald J. Trump is our president-elect. Within the Diocese of Eastern Michigan, these past 10 years have seen a decline in membership and average Sunday attendance. We are now 45 congregations, on our way very quickly to 43. Annual congregational giving has declined, making financial viability increasingly difficult for an increasing number of congregations. Our population continues to decline, and Michigan demographics show us growing older while losing our young to opportunities in other parts of the country. The reality of our communities and our churches is one that ought to make all of us pause. So let's do that. Let's pause and take stock. Who are we today compared to who we were 10 years ago? A few years ago, I floated the idea, based on my observations from that long ago listening tour and from conversations and interactions in the interim, that we are a people of hope in a culture of fear. That notion resonated with many of you, and it has been and remains a way for me to understand the complexities, paradoxes, and challenges of being the Diocese of Eastern Michigan. The notion that we are in a culture of fear is even clearer to me today than it was just 4 days ago. Much of what drove the U.S. electorate and what informs us within this diocese is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of change, fear of financial instability, fear that the church may not be there for us at the most important moments of our lives. Yet in the midst of all that fear, we are people of hope. Yes, we are a people of hope. And we are people whose lives are nourished by a relationship with a God who is, in the words of our presiding bishop, loving, liberating, and life-giving. It is this God on whom all our hope is founded. We live that hope by risking experimentation with models of ministry that move us beyond the safety and certainty of traditional models. Whether an embrace of baptismal ministry in the form of congregationally formed teams of lay and clergy, shared ministry with locally formed clergy through the Coppage Gordon School for Ministry, and its tri-diocesan collaboration in the Academy for Vocational Leadership, or a willingness to explore beyond canonical boundaries in Eucharistic communities with only occasional clergy leadership. We explore and we stretch in order to be both viable and vital in our local context. We live that hope by striving to overcome seemingly impossible financial hurdles, to offer life-changing summer camp experiences to our young people. Participation in the multiple offerings for children, youth, families, and groups at Camp Chickagami are at historic highs, while financial viability remains a very real concern. We live that hope by growing our capacity and willingness to confront issues of justice. The Social Ministries Justice Network and the Lower Peninsula Diversity Task Force continue to work faithfully to lead us into fulfilling our baptismal promises to strive for justice and peace and respect the dignity of every human being. We live that hope by engaging individual and group study of Holy Scriptures. Over the course of the past 2 years, individuals and groups from across this diocese, the Episcopal Church, and the Anglican Communion have joined in a weekly encounter with Holy Scriptures produced in this diocese, the Biblical Wild, designed to make connection between God's narratives and the narratives of our own lives. We live that hope by loving our neighbors through partnerships and creative response during the ongoing Flint water crisis. With leadership from St. Paul's Flint, St. Andrew's Flint, Christ Enrichment Center, and Crossover Downtown Ministries, we have partnered with the Flint community and Episcopal Relief and Development to respond not only with stopgap measures of bottled water provision and water filtration devices, but also initiated programs of food literacy and community organizing that have drawn national attention to the devastating effects of environmental racism and systemic injustice. We live that hope by recognizing that we are stronger together than we are apart. Conversations began almost 2 years ago, inviting congregations in the Blue Water area of the diocese to imagine possibilities for collaborative ministries. Those conversations have led to a surprising and creative decision by All Saints Marysville, St. Paul's St. Clair, and St. Mark's Marine City to acknowledge that the future of their separate ministries would be immeasurably enhanced by combining resources and taking the bold initiative to close their individual congregations and become one Episcopal presence in southern St. Clair County. This Blue Water Initiative holds much promise for other parts of the diocese, where we can indeed be stronger together than we are apart. We are indeed a people of hope and a culture of fear. But what can we say about our future? Maintaining and building on our hope will serve us well, but more is required of us. 1 John 4:18 says, "Perfect love casts out all fear." And 1 Corinthians 13:13 reminds us that faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. Love is indeed the answer. I began this address by reminding us of our beginnings together, a period of deep and holy listening to one another. It was a time of setting aside preconceptions and misconceptions. It was a time of gathering together in our various neighborhoods all across this great diocese of Eastern Michigan to discover possibilities and hopes and dreams. It was a time to reassure you that together we could chart new territory and explore new possibilities. It was a time to renew our covenant with one another, to walk faithfully in challenging and sometimes alien territory. It was a time to lay aside our fears and to risk a deep relationship with one another and imagine a brighter future as a diocese. Today we live and move and have our being in a world characterized by division, destructive rhetoric, demonizing of the other, and callous disregard for those whose opinions differ. This is not the Christian way. It is not the Episcopal way, and it is not the American way. Let us once again be so bold and be so faithful to set aside our fear and go into our neighborhoods to listen to one another, honor one another, and love one another. Our attendance may not increase. Our finances may not increase. Our challenges will not go away. But by truly listening to one another, we are seeking and serving Christ in one another and loving our neighbor as ourselves. We are a people of hope and a culture of fear, and we know that love is the answer. May God continue to bless us in all our ways.